Hi guys, this is Lauren, and today I'm going to be sharing with you 5 of my essential tools to use when you are creating pastel paintings. I'm not going to be talking about pastels, specifically what brands or even paper. I'm just going to be talking about tools I use in addition to paper and pastels to help me create my paintings. So the first thing I use is rubbing alcohol. You can find this in the pharmacy department at almost any grocery store. It's really inexpensive. This bottle was like $1, and it is fantastic for creating your underpaintings. And I use it with a stiff bristled brush that you typically use for oil painting. This is a paintbrush I've had since I was 15. Very inexpensive, and I found that this is fantastic for blending it out, specifically if you are working on sanded paper. I love using rubbing alcohol for the underpaintings for blending out those first layers of pastels because it dries very quickly. It's really great at breaking down that pastel and getting it into the tooth of the paper without a long dry time. And it is very inexpensive. So, first thing, next up is alcohol ink or acrylic ink or any kind of ink you can find or that you have available. You could even use dark watercolors for this, but I like using my ink because it gets very dark without much effort. And I use it to create the shadow areas in my paintings. And you can see it a lot in some of the videos I've done where I do drawing with like a pastel pencil, shade in some of the areas with the generic color that's going to be in there, blend it out with rubbing alcohol, and once it dries, I go in with my dark inks. And it's usually black mixed with either violet, magenta, or blue or turquoise. And I do that to create the shadows. And I do that for several reasons. It helps anchor my picture. Sometimes when you're working with pastels and you're doing a lot of layers, you can kind of lose your spot and kind of forget where things need to be. And having these dark areas where the shadows are can kind of help act as a visual reminder and a guide of where I'm working. The ink also is great for making sure that any pastel that flakes off in that area, so if I have dark pastels in that section, if any of that flakes off, there's not going to be any white specks showing through. Also, pastels are notorious for being difficult to find dark pastels. And the pastels that you do have that are dark are oftentimes just pure black. And so doing under paintings with a mix of like violet and black in this case, I can get those darks dark enough without using a straight black pastel. So there's those. Next up is my photo corners. I use these to help hold my paper down. If you're not familiar with them, they are kind of stickers on the back and they have little hooks or a little flap that kind of holds a picture down by the corner. I don't know if you can see that demonstrated there. And then I have bigger ones to hold bigger pictures. And these are fantastic for holding my pastel paper down. Tape isn't very good for holding sanded paper down. It doesn't adhere very well, and it creates more of a halo effect when you're getting to the edges of your paper. And so having the minimal amount of space used to hold the paper down that you're working on will reduce the amounts of halo. And so these work really great, especially they attach to foam core, which is what I typically draw on with pastels really well. And what happens is as if I'm coming over here to a section and I'm blending it out, I can pop out one corner, color that in, and then pop it back in. And it's like that section would still most likely be covered by the mat, but it helps reduce the chance of a halo building up and having a white section right there. So these are very handy, very inexpensive, and if you want to reduce the amount you use, you can have several on like each side of your foam core board. You could have these set up for multiple sizes. So I typically do pastel home paintings in a 16 by 20 size, and so I have these on one of my boards in a 16 by 20 layout, and I can always reuse these. I don't take them off, I just pop in a new paper and get to work. So these are a very handy tool to have. The next tool I love is workable fixative. This is by Krylon, and it is designed to kind of keep all the particles of pigment from your pastels or your charcoal onto your paper and not smear off. It also creates more texture, so you can rework an area if you've used up the tooth of the paper. This does make the area that you spray it darker, and that's actually one of the main reasons I use it for. If I find an area a general area is too light and I didn't make it quite dark enough, I will spray that in the section and it will darken that whole thing up, and I don't have to do more layers of pastel. So I found this is really helpful for that. Another thing I found it's helpful for is to isolate layers. So if I'm doing a super colorful sunset that has a lot of colors in it, I will use this to help isolate some of the layers I'm doing. That way, if there's yellow on the clouds where the sun's hitting it, and then there's blue in the sky right next to it, it helps reduce the opportunity for it to turn green. So this is a really handy tool. I don't use it a ton. I just do light coats, and I only use it as needed, but it is a very handy tool to have when you need it. Finally, I love using rubber shapers. These are just some of the ones I have. They come in all different sizes and shapes. They're typically used for pottery making to help carve designs and patterns into the sides of your pots. And they just have a rubber tip that's kind of flexible. And these are really great for blending and creating texture in your piece. If you need to get into fine corners, these are great to do it. If you need to kind of help create a tree-like texture or leaves, these are also great. I love that they don't pick up too much pigment, so they're not picking up the pigment that you've deposited. They just help shift it around to the desired effect. So these are really inexpensive. They withstand sanded paper very well. You can use them on traditional pastel paper. They're really pretty durable. I bought this set for like $1 a piece, so about $5 for the set, and really great tools. I've had these for a couple years and I use them on almost every piece. So I really recommend those. So that's my 5 pastel essential tools. I hope you found them useful. I hope that helps clarify what I'm doing in some of my videos and helps inspire you to get to work painting. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you enjoy my videos and want to learn more, please hit the subscribe button so you can learn more from me. Thanks for watching. Bye!